Not on yet. There we go. Good evening. I would like to welcome Nick Scarambolo, president of the North Fulton Gideons International, who will lead us in tonight's invocation.
Thank you. It's an honor. Dear Lord, we lift up the City of Milton council members and their staff and give you thanks for their efforts. And as we lift them up in prayer, we stand upon your word, as it says in 1 John 5:14 through 15. And this is the confidence that we have in you, God, that no matter what we ask, according to your will, you hear us. And if we know that you hear us, we know that we have the petitions that we desire of you. And these are the petitions that we lift up, also according to your word, dear Lord, in Isaiah 11:2. We pray, dear Lord, that the Spirit of the Lord will rest upon this council and the staff, the spirit of wisdom and understanding, the spirit of counsel and strength, the spirit of knowledge and fear of the Lord will rest upon them, so that as they guide the city of Milton according to your will, we are confident that it will continue to flourish. And we pray this in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
And on a personal note, not that that wasn't personal, we wanted to thank you also for allowing us to be at the Crabapple Festival. And part of the thanks is giving you those Bibles. And there's a special verse inside the Bible for each one of you. And just wanted to let you know that we gave out 800 Bibles at the Crabapple Festival. Thanks again.
Thank you. That's fantastic. I would like to call the regular meeting of the Milton City Council for Monday, October 6, 2025 to order. The city encourages you to review tonight's agenda carefully. Each citizen who chooses to participate in public comment must complete a comment card and submit it to the city clerk prior to the agenda item being called. While the Milton rules allow a speaker to turn in their comment card up until the clerk calls the agenda item, once the agenda item is called, no more comment cards can be accepted. Will the city clerk please call the roll and make general announcements?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be happy to call roll for the October 6th, 2025 regular meeting. I would like to remind those in attendance to please silence all cell phones at this time. As the mayor mentioned, if you would like to make a public comment, you are required to complete a public comment card prior to that agenda item being called. All speakers will identify themselves with name, address, and/or organization before beginning your comment. Please review tonight's agenda. If you would like to make a comment, please bring your cards to me now. Demonstration of any sort within the chamber is prohibited. Please refrain from any applause, cheering, booing, outburst, or dialogue with any person speaking. Anyone in violation may be asked to leave. Mayor and Council, as I call roll this evening, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Peyton Jameson.
Here.
Councilmember Andrea Veerhoff.
Here.
Councilmember Doug Haney.
Here.
Councilmember Juliette Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Carol Kirkley.
Here.
Councilmember Jan Jacobus.
Present.
And Councilmember Phil Cranmer.
Here.
Mayor, you do have a quorum. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next is approval of the meeting agenda.
Mayor, may I jump in really quick? I did want to mention to you that we are going to have you add some items tonight. There are 3 alcohol business licenses that were inadvertently omitted from tonight's agenda due to a simple clerical error when during the agenda submittal process. And although these items were mistakenly left off, all 3 licenses were properly advertised in accordance with legal requirements. Staff is now bringing forward those to be added to tonight's agenda under the public hearing section to ensure that they are reviewed as they were intended.
Mr. Mayor, just a brief ancillary comment to that. State law specifically authorizes governments to add things to their agenda even on the night of the meeting, particularly when they are necessary to be considered, given that these were advertised and there are individuals that need these licenses. assuming they're in the ordinary course and are proper, then it is appropriate to have them on tonight's agenda.
Okay, thank you. With that, I would like to ask for a motion to approve the meeting agenda with the additional amendments of add one, agenda item number 100601, consideration of the issuance of an alcohol beverage license to Yum Thai and Sushi LLC, doing business as Yum Thai Cuisine and Bar. Number two, agenda item number 100602, consideration of the issuance of an alcohol beverage license to Naiku Barbecue and Hot Pot LLC. And number three, agenda item number 100603, consideration of the issuance of an alcohol beverage license to IEH Milton LLC, doing business as B&B Tavern Crab Apple. In addition, I'd like to add an executive session to discuss personnel, land acquisition, and litigation. Do I have a motion on that meeting agenda as amended?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda item with the addition of agenda items number 100601, 100602, and 100603.
In the executive session?
And an executive session.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Jacobus and a second from Councilmember Verhoff to approve the meeting agenda with the amendments. Voting is now open. That motion passes unanimously. Okay, next is general public comment. Do we have any general public comment?
We do, Mayor.
Okay. General public comment is a time for citizens to share information with the mayor and the city council and to provide input and opinions on any matter that is not scheduled for its own public hearing during today's meeting. Please remember this is not a time to engage the mayor or members of the city council in conversation. When your name is called, please come forward and speak into the microphone stating your name, address, and organization for the record. If you will please call the first public comment speaker.
Mayor, I invite Christy Hayes to the podium, please.
We have just one comment? Is it just one? Two? Okay.
Christy Hayes, 13585 Hopewell Road. I'm here tonight to remind council of the April 21st, 2025 work session where 3 representatives from the Milton Equestrian Committee, Tony Rich, Shannon Reagan Quigley, and Carson Seville presented their version of large lot incentives to this body. Their recommendations were as follows. Number 1, provide a manure compost site for residents to drop off manure where composted manure would then be available for residents to use for home gardens and flower beds. Number 2, provide pasture maintenance services at a negotiated group rate through a third party that would offer no-till pasture planting, application of herbicide, and fertilizing. Number 3, reduced variance and permit requirements for structures housing animals such as barns, chicken coops, and run-in sheds with the caveat of maximum square foot limits. Number 4, educating the approximately 200 properties in Milton that are eligible for a conservation use valuation assessment, also known as a CUVA. And number 5, work with staff to clearly define Milton's interpretation of ag exemption with possible penalties for properties that are not performing bona fide agricultural practices. Carson Seville also provided some statistics to council on the current state of farms in Milton. We have 226 farms with horses, donkeys, or cows, and additional potential farms which are fenced with a structure housing animals that do not currently house animals. 94 CUVAs in Milton, 1,400 properties over 3 acres, and 257 over 10 acres. The average farm in Milton is 12 acres. Tony Rich closed the presentation with a suggestion for exploring an active equestrian park in Milton that should not equate to Wills Park, but offer something unique to Milton. The Milton Equestrian Committee is ready and willing to come up with a business plan for that equestrian park. At the April work session, council was very receptive to these suggestions and thanked the members of the MEC for speaking on the committee's behalf. I remind council of the priorities of the MEC because the Milton website large lot incentive page still has the city's initial suggested incentives, which several members of the community, including myself, have spoken about, which are, number 1, allowing accessory buildings, sheds, barns, storage buildings, etc., in the front yards of 3+ acre properties by right, meaning the property owner would not need to seek additional city approval. Number 2, allowing covered riding arenas for horses on 10-plus acre properties by right. Number 3, allowing home-based businesses on 3-plus acre properties with administrative approval, meaning the property owner would need the city's consent. Number 4, allowing short-term rentals on 3-plus acre properties with administrative approval. In my opinion, this suggestion is an abomination to Milton residents and should not be up for consideration. And number 5, waiving the fee for an occupational tax certificate, also known as a business license, for applicable commercial ventures on horse farms. And number 6, providing a stormwater management guide featuring alternatives for large lot owners, as well as requiring special buffers when there's a subdivision of adjacent land to protect large lot owners. Hearing these proposed incentives back to back should remind you of how disparate the city and the MEC are when it comes to large lot incentives. As a large lot homeowner, I am very much appreciative of the suggestions of the MEC and implore the council to consider incorporating their recommendations and striking some of the staff recommendations for incentivizing large lot owners to keep their farms as farms. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to invite Julie Zonner Bailey to the podium, please.
Good evening. My name is Julie Zonner Bailey, and I reside at 255 Hickory Flat Road, Milton, Georgia. I'd like to address the conservation easement at the Birmingham Park, the potential of large land lot incentives, and also a sidewalk that's been discussed on Hickory Flat Road. Regarding the easement at the Birmingham Park, I applaud you all for seeing this long-desired protection of our largest contiguous green space that benefits all Milton citizens through to completion. It's important, and it'll be our legacy for future Milton generations. I do ask the majority of the parkland be preserved for perpetuity. I know in past meetings, there's been discussion about carving out a large portion of the parkland and keeping it out of the easement. I urge you to keep any amount of carve out to a bare minimum. Most of the parkland should be preserved for perpetuity via the conservation easement. A few acres of carve out for some uses could make sense, but it should not be 10 or 20 or more acres. The unintended consequence of leaving too much of the parkland outside of an easement is that ugly, non-appropriate uses could be placed at what could be and should be one of the most beautiful natural entrances and access points to over 200 acres of pristine green space. I urge you to put the majority of the 200 plus acres into the easement. Thank you. Regarding large lot incentives, I certainly support large lots in Milton. After all, it's our large tracts of land, farms, woodlands, and natural spaces that help to create the Milton that so many of us have loved and worked so hard to protect for so long. I am concerned, however, regarding what could be some very real unintended consequences with some of the proposals that I've heard. First, why is a 3-acre parcel considered a large lot for purposes of these incentives? A 10-acre parcel would not be appropriate for many of the proposed incentives, much less a 3-acre parcel. And on gravel roads, 3-acre parcels are already the minimum, and they do not need additional incentives, at least on our gravel roads. Before creating new incentives, let's make sure that we've leveraged the CUVA. Right now, the CUVA is underutilized. While there has been some education around CUVA, I do believe that the city of Milton could and should do more to encourage and educate large lot landowners about the benefits of CUVA. Seminars, directed emails to large lot landowners, dedicated staff efforts, and more could grow the number of properties with a CUVA, thereby protecting more large land lots. Offering up businesses via administrative approvals on lots of 3 acres or more is a very risky business and bypasses our strong land use policies that have helped shape and protect Milton for many years. Why would we knowingly allow businesses to locate on acreage throughout Milton simply because the land was 3 acres or more? We have land use policies and procedures in place to ensure any business locating on any parcel, regardless of size of the parcel, is appropriate and keeping with the land use policies of Milton. Removing those policies sets in motion many unintended consequences regarding types of businesses on AG1 land and non-commercially zoned land, hours of operations, buffers, noise, consistency with the surrounding acreage, and so on and so forth. Short and long-term rentals via administrative approval introduces a slew of risks and uses on lands that today are not allowed in Milton. We have examples already in Milton where such rentals are causing havoc in our community. Short and long-term rentals have a multitude of risks for our community and others. This is not consistent with the values and land uses of Milton. This should not be considered an incentive. Perhaps we should discuss possible risks and regulations first before allowing such an incentive. Other municipalities are prohibiting short and long-term rentals due to the risks in their communities. Covered riding arenas on 10-plus acres by right needs more consideration. These arenas can be very, very large and could negatively impact the adjacent properties. Size of arenas, configuration of the specific parcel, proximity to adjacent properties, open or closed covered arenas, a number of arenas surrounding a given property, visibility of the arena relative to the topography of adjacent landowners, removal of tree canopy needed to place such arenas, lights, etc., all must be considered. Ugh. How does this need to be by right? Do we
1
really
minute.
have that many folks asking for these? How many requests has the city had for covered arenas? Why not keep this as a part of the existing process for seeking approval of said covered arenas? There are many unintended consequences that must be considered. Considering the above, I am curious why a larger focus group of large landowners has not been assembled. If there has been such a focus group, I know that we certainly haven't been invited, nor were we included in any discussions about these incentives. I believe this should have been one of the first steps, not the last, nor a step that was excluded from this process entirely. Perhaps such an outreach could occur before large lot incentives introduces a myriad of unintended consequences that cannot be undone. There's been some data analysis mentioned, but I believe that more data is needed. Beyond 3 acres and 10-acre parcels, how many acres are larger than 10 acres? How many of those larger land lots need to have perhaps different incentives to preserve more of those? There's much to be considered and much that has not yet been considered that does need your, I was going to say, devout attention.
Time's
Lastly,
expired.
can I have 30 seconds about
No, ma'am,
sidewalks?
sorry. We're good. Thank you.
No?
Appreciate it. Now,
Okay.
sorry.
Separately, I'd love to talk about concrete sidewalks that we don't need on Hickory Flat Road.
Thank you. All right, any more public comment?
That, one more, Mayor.
Oh, there is? Okay.
I can't see to the
Okay.
podium.
Good evening. My name is Ike Yancey. I live at 13274 Marywood Drive. I've lived in Milton for 21 years. I'm here tonight to speak in opposition to short-term rentals. When I look at this law, it appears that it applies mostly to non-HOA properties. Based on my experience with short-term rentals at an HOA property, it doesn't make much difference where it applies. Our subdivision has had an HOA for 19 years. I've been the president of the HOA for 17 of those years. Our subdivision documents prohibit short-term rentals. In spite of that, I've had personal experience dealing with short-term rentals. Sometimes people will just ignore the rules. We have had people list their property on our subdivision for this type of thing. It wasn't hard to figure out who they were. Initially, the driveway would be full of cars. As the evening wore on, numerous cars would be parked on the street, creating traffic problems. Loud music could be heard many doors down from inside the townhome or from the back patio. Getting it all shut down was a real nightmare. The whole thing is a major nuisance. I don't think we need this in Milton. No matter where in Milton it might be allowed. I can't imagine why people in a great place to live like Milton would want to allow it. You've passed a law about the noise from fireworks around horse farms. This kind of thing would be going in the exact opposite direction. I can assure you that it will never be allowed in our subdivision. Thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Any other public
Mayor,
comment?
that concludes general public comment.
Okay, we'll close public comment and now move on to the consent agenda. Will City Clerk please say on the items?
Mayor, that first item is approval of the September 15th, 2025 regular city council meeting minutes. It's agenda item number 25263. Our next item is approval of financial statements and investment report for the period ending August the 31st, 2025. Agenda item number 25264. Next is approval of change order number 5 for an extension to the current managed service contract with Interdev for managed IT and GIS support. Agenda item number 25265. Our next item is approval of a master services agreement and addendum number 1 between the City of Milton and GovernmentJobs.com, doing business as NeoGov, for and on behalf of itself and subsidiary Power DMS for additional police record management software. It's agenda item number 25266. Our next item is approval of a change order number 2 to a professional services agreement between the City of Milton and Pond and Company, Inc. for design services for the Cox Road intersections. Agenda item number 25267. Our final consent agenda is approval of a services agreement and addendum number 1 between the City of Milton and Vertisoft LLC. It's Urban SDK for speed and volume data and analysis of Milton's roads network. It's agenda item number 25268. Mayor Jameson?
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as read.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilor Haney and a second from Councilor Johnson to approve the consent agenda as read. Voting is now open. Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Okay, we'll now move on to reports and presentation. Will City Clerk please stay on the first item?
Mayor, that first item is a proclamation recognizing October the 5th through the 11th as Fire Prevention Week in Milton. Mayor Jameson?
Thank you. I am proud to recognize Fire Prevention Week. This annual observance reminds us all of the importance of fire safety and the role we each play in protecting our homes, families, and communities. Whereas about 345,000 residential fires occur annually in the United States, with roughly half attributed to cooking and the rest to other causes. And whereas one particularly challenging fire source relates to lithium-ion batteries, so much so that the National Fire Prevention Agency made Charge into Fire Safety Lithium-Ion Batteries the theme of the latest National Fire Prevention Week. And whereas this runs from October 5th through the 11th this year, with Milton Fire and Rescue joining other agencies nationwide and touting its buy, charge, recycle theme and the importance of fire prevention generally. And whereas, even as they prepare exhaustively to have the training, stamina, and tools to subdue any blazes, Milton firefighters work hard to do what they can to stop such fires from starting in the first place. And whereas simple steps like always tending to food on the stove, not overloading power outlets, testing smoke alarms, and having a family escape plan can be critical to saving property and lives. And whereas Milton Fire and Rescue's Community Risk Reduction Unit works diligently year-round to educate and engage citizens on proactive ways they can lessen the risk of potentially devastating fires. And whereas we encourage our community to be smart, vigilant, and do what they can to look out for themselves, their families, and their neighbors. Now, therefore, we, the mayor and the city council of the city of Milton, proclaim October 5th through the 11th, 2025 as Fire Prevention Week in Milton, and we encourage people to be mindful and take action to prevent house fires as best they can. This is given under my hand and seal of the city of Milton, Georgia, on this 6th day of October of 2025. Oh, yeah, the fire team come up. Oh, there we go.
How cute.
You want to go down and stand like that?
Oh, he's pretty cool.
Sparky.
I don't know what we're doing.
Photo down here in the back.
Yeah, y'all are
Standing behind the banner.
yeah, y'all are
If
great.
you want to be up there, that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sparky.
Sparky see through all that?
Sparky, you gonna eat it?
Next to Sparky.
Proclamations around so you can see it.
Dude, scoot over something behind a dog. Nope. Now Juliet needs to be like that.
Ready? 3,
Thank you. I'm sure that's not hot at all.
Okay, will you please stay on the next item?
Thank you, Mayor. That next item is going to be a proclamation recognizing the extraordinary season of the undefeated Milton High Junior Eagles volleyball team.
Thank you. It is with great pride and admiration that I recognize the outstanding accomplishments of the Milton High Junior Eagles volleyball team. Whereas the Milton Junior Eagles volleyball program gives girls in grades 6 through 8 within its district the opportunity to learn and compete. And whereas its two teams began their latest season in early August, just after school began, hoping to have a fun and productive season. And whereas the Junior Eagles A team, led by Coach Laura Ertl, succeeded in that regard and many more by compelling a jaw-dropping 26-0 record during the months of August and September. And whereas this included victories over numerous other middle school age feeder teams, recently finishing their campaign as regional champs. And whereas the Milton squad also won the Roswell Tournament Cup, A5 Middle School Championship, and Founders Cup over its rival Roswell. And whereas the Junior Eagles made our community proud, displaying impressive talent, significant growth, and outstanding character. Now, therefore, we, the mayor and the city council of the city of Milton, celebrate the Milton High School Junior Eagles volleyball team and congratulate its members on their extraordinary, successful season. And this is given under my hand and seal of the city of Milton, Georgia, on the 6th day of October of 2025. Congratulations.
Congratulations, ladies.
Nice job, girls.
Well
Ladies.
done. Well done.
It's hard to do.
Can you just tell them if there was something on one day?
Y'all scoot.
Big money one day.
Can y'all scoot down a little bit this way?
Like that, right?
You can just span out. We're going to have a few people taking pictures.
Well done, coaches.
One,
All right, everybody ready?
1, 2, 3.
Say volleyball.
Aaron's like, say scholarship.
Y'all can stay if you want. Stay. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, lost everybody. Pizza delivery. Bring one back.
Thanks, y'all. Okay, will the city clerk please sound the next item?
Mayor, that next report and presentation item is item C. It's the discussion of the conservation easement at Birmingham Park. Public Works Director, Sarah Leaders.
All right, good evening. Tonight, this is going to be a discussion of the proposed conservation easement for Birmingham Park. So the purpose is really to discuss the terms of what's going to be the proposed conservation easement agreement. So that has various components that we'd like some feedback on as we are working with the land trust on setting that up. To start with, I'll go through the proposed conservation easement area, the right-of-way abandonment of Old Bullpen Road, and then we'll get into the agreement terms and what improvements can be considered as part of that. So we initially discussed the overall park area or city-owned parcels back in April of this year. And at that point, we showed all the parcels that are currently owned by the city, as well as the location of Old Bullpen Road through the property. We then went through a few exercises to come up with some proposed areas for the conservation easement. And this is what we ultimately landed on, with 185 acres being in the proposed conservation easement. So that is all the green shaded areas on this map. Of the remaining 22, 12 are already part of the existing Public Works yard and the fire station. So there's 10 additional areas, 10 additional acres that are proposed for future possible use that are not restricted to the conservation easement. Later on tonight, we'll present the initial step in the Old Bullpen Road right-of-way. If we go back to this map, you can see the black line is where that right-of-way runs through the park. And so to make the conservation easement simpler and to remove the unneeded road right-of-way, we're proposing to end it at the point where the conservation easement begins. So we'll stop the right-of-way at that location. Okay, next, getting into the conservation easement agreement. So it includes, first of all, these are the requirements. These are the must-do items of the agreement. And the first is use limitations. Any activity on the property which is inconsistent with the purpose of the conservation easement is prohibited, and it shall be restricted from any development or any use other than those defined in the reserved rights section of the agreement, which we'll get to in a minute. The other component of this requirement, thing we must do, is that there cannot be any construction or maintenance of improvements except as described in the reserved rights section. These are the pieces of the agreement that are what we're going to call the allowed rights, the things that we are able to do, the uses that are built into that agreement. So, of course, anything that is needed, any action that's needed to protect public health and safety, we're able to do that sort of activity. Outdoor recreational activities, these are some of the ones listed in the standard agreement. Educational activities, and then park management activities, which includes some various things like agriculture, ecological improvements, and trails. It also includes maintenance of what's already existing as far as roads, access drives, and utilities. And now the point where we can help to reserve the rights of the things that may want to be allowed at the park in the future. The first item of discussion is trails. So the standard allowed use is that trails can be, all the existing trails are usable. There's opportunity for new trails, and then maintenance and operation of all the trails. The question that we want to discuss tonight is, do we want to limit that trail material type? Do we want to say at this park, we only want gravel or natural surface? And then do we want to limit the trail width through this conservation easement agreement? So those are two options related to trails. And the other component is related to structures and kind of some of these larger improvement possibilities. So the agreement groups those into small and large areas, with small being less than 250 square feet. That's going to be the smaller things like the kiosks and benches that are already existing there, as well as trash cans and picnic tables. The term in the agreement is proposed as long as these are not in locations or in such a quantity that takes away from the conservation value of the property. And then the large improvements are what we wanted to discuss tonight too. So we've got, again, the trail materials and the large type of improvement that we may look at in the future. So here is a breakdown of kind of some of the ideas of what could fit into that large improvement bucket, whether it's expanding our parking lot, the gravel parking lot. We would want to call out that there may be an area that the handicap accessible spaces would need to be paved and then have handicap access to the restroom. And then the restroom with utilities to support that. Do we want to consider an opportunity for any pavilions or barn structures in addition to what is already there? A dog park area with possibly fencing or benches, and then into the equestrian amenity category with open air barn-like structures for shade or equestrian use, riding area if we're putting down material and encouraging a specific area to be used for a riding area that's instructional and recreational only, of course, no commercial use for that, but we would want to spell that out in the agreement. any other fenced off areas that we'd want to consider. And then if we want to look at a possibility for a riding arena, either covered or open. So the next steps in the conservation easement process, and then I'll come back to the discussion points, are to finalize the right-of-way abandonment, which we're going to initiate that later on. It's an agenda item later on tonight. And then we'll finalize the conservation easement language and terms, which is what we're discussing tonight. And then we'll bring before you a final conservation easement agreement. And I can go back to the points of discussion, starting with the trails, or I'd be glad to answer any other questions before we get into the discussion piece.
Questions?
Yeah, comments. Ms. Leader, so Sarah, job number one on the trails, I would think, is footing for the horses, which is natural.
Right.
And I think that would preclude gravel, and certainly not going to want to ride on anything harder than regular clay. What else is under consideration?
So I'll show, I think I have the trail prioritization plan, so you all can see this, was some of the improvements that were discussed as the trail plan was being looked at. And some of those, especially the one from the parking over to Birmingham Highway and to the destinations at the crossroads there, that one was identified as possibly a gravel trail. Actually, let's see.
And didn't we have equestrian-only trails? Were we contemplating that in the future too?
Right, some were specifically, there's a decomposed granite, crushed stone type trail is the green on the map here, is what was proposed in the trail plan. So there were a few areas where, especially again, the access to the crossroads was identified as a possible gravel in this trail plan document.
I know that you're at the concepting stage, but a number of the things that you've mentioned, it starts to erode some of the value of Birmingham, which is one, potentially the quiet opportunity to move around on horseback without impediments and things like that. Can I move on to the additional 10 acres?
I have a question on trails.
Go ahead, please.
Has there been any consideration to work with the equestrian committee and the trails committee to get sort of a unified voice or recommendation? I have an opinion, but it's an uneducated opinion. I would love for the recommendation to be brought forth from our various committees who obviously have an interest in their respective areas. Is that a possibility?
I knew when the trail plan was developed, it involved various groups, and so that was what we were basing the options of. That it looked like gravel and natural surface were really the main trail types proposed for Birmingham Park. But we could go back to those particular boards to see. I mean, if there's an interest in something other than a natural surface or a gravel trail here.
No, I guess I just didn't know how granular you want to get and what trails will have what sort of material or not. But in theory, I'm agreeing with that. As long as that too is supported by trails and equestrian, I'd feel a lot better knowing that.
Right. Any future expansion would definitely go through those groups and decide what's the best material for this particular loop. What the agreement is going to help us with is just to know, are we limited to only gravel or natural surface, or do we want to propose? Right now, we didn't propose initially any sort of paved or concrete material within the park. We had left it. We felt it was gravel or natural surface based on the trail plan.
Okay.
So that's where we were leaning with it. We just didn't wanted to make sure if we put that in the agreement that that's the intention of
Because if
council.
you remove the gravel now, it's not coming back.
Right.
Yeah, okay, got it. You had a question on 10 acres?
Yeah.
Did you? All right.
So I can appreciate in this phase thinking that maybe we should preserve an additional 10 acres. I saw that earlier, and given that this is supposed to be our signature natural hub, a lot of harm can come from 10 acres. It's adjacent that could be loud. I mean, I can't think of anything worse, and I think everybody knows I love dogs. I have 4. But a dog park can be incredibly loud. I would not want to see a civic swimming pool. I would not want to see, I mean, there were so many stipulations I would want to put on that, that if you needed 10 acres for whatever reason, that it mostly would have to be natural, so I'm sure it would defeat the purpose. But I mean, I would say I would strongly try to limit impervious surfaces to like an acre or less. I mean, we're either going to embrace this for what it has been as we move it towards conservation, or we're going to like do 1,000 cuts on the front end that are going to erode what we set out to do. But noise on that 10 acres could kill the experience for the rest of the thing. So I'm just very passionate about that.
And Steve, real quick on that, because we talked about this, about the future of that 10 acres and where the public works facility is and how that impacts everything. Can you kind of jog our memory on that?
That's what I was under the impression the reservation was for. It's not for dog parks or other recreational uses. It's for the potential future needs of the city 10, 20 years out.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, we did talk about that.
Yeah, we did.
And what we discussed is currently you use that back part of what we're looking at there. When we have a massive storm, that's where trees go, right? That's where we leverage that for public works work, not for parks or heavy machinery necessarily, but as an overflow, right?
10 acres pretty large for that, but as long as it's itemized and the exclusions are itemized, then I'm good.
And I think the thought too was from that conversation, the city does own a lot of property. The city only owns so much property already next to a fire department and a public works space. And so to say we're going to create, if the city ever does need extra space for additional public works effects, doing it anywhere else would seem unnatural. Doing it next to where we already have it may make sense. So it was more of just preserving it for the just in case we ever need it, right? Isn't that what we kind of decided?
Right, it was facility usage area. And when we subdivided off of what actually already is separate parcels, if there's a deed restriction, looking at it, that we could put on that facility piece as well to say what the uses of it could be, even though it's not in the conservation easement. But
That's right. I mean, really what we're talking about, mainly what Ms. Leader is looking for direction on, is sort of the guardrails on the agreement with the trustee. Because that's a big deal, because once you put that in the trustee agreement, it's outside the bounds of the council being able to affect it anymore. That's the whole point, is it's held by somebody else. What's left behind, we can talk about how we lock down what's left behind, but again, we're not talking about putting that 10 acres into another entity's possession. That's the difference, to your point.
Going back to trails, is council okay with staff's recommendation on the natural trails, no concrete, no pavement, and having it open for the trails committee, obviously? So Sarah, I'm kind of curious, so as this is done and we allow natural, whether it's wood chips, dirt, gravel, whatever, the trails committee will still be able to, or the council, add additional trails at all, or in the future? Okay.
Yes, it does allow for new trail construction. It's just, do we want to limit anything new based on material or width is the main question for trails.
Council okay with
I'm good with limiting it to natural surface.
All right.
And so we can go with a width that's just what's minimally needed to allow for the uses, is how we have that worded. Okay, so that's good on material type. Is there any additions or changes to the small improvements category other than what is shown on the screen here?
I think those are all reasonable.
Seems rather subjective, but other than that, I don't have a problem with it.
Okay, now the large improvement bucket. So we do have, based on the trail plan and just future improvement plans, looking at expanding the the general parking area, and we did the equestrian parking a few years ago, but this would be to provide a little bit of a larger general visiting parking area and with a restroom within that location too. Those were the first two were the main two that we were looking to put into the agreement to allow that those improvements could take place in the future. And the others were just some other identified potential, but we don't necessarily need to list them. We can list them. That's what like your input on.
Because if you don't add them, they're not.
Right.
They're not. Okay, got it.
Is this within the 185 or the 22?
The 185.
185.
Council have any feedback on any of that?
But given the potential layout, I mean, the 22 could probably very adequately cover whatever the city needed for maintenance and also have a riding arena and park or whatever, the way it's laid out. So it could be there. I really don't know if there's a desire for that. But I think that is a place where it could be if people were interested in that.
But Mary, what you're saying, just so I'm clear, if you don't add this now, you can never add it back in.
You can never add it.
But I'm just
Right.
saying we can default to the 22 acres because that's a lot of land.
Could.
Yeah.
Alternatively,
Yeah.
this too would give you flexibility if you
Right.
ever need it.
Like I was just looking at a barn, for example. Like I don't see there's a small barn's not going to hurt at some point in time. But like a dog park, for example, I don't think if there's a dog park in Milton, it's going to go at Birmingham Park, and I don't think that's the whole purpose of Birmingham Park to have a dog park. So
I think that should be there.
that's what I'm saying. I don't. That's not our vision, right? Birmingham Park's that's not our vision there, and hopefully we put that in writing now. It'll never be. It'll never.
I
Be.
went where you went. I'm thinking of like a riding, like
Yeah.
it doesn't appropriately fit within the 22 acres. You want it just adjacent to it.
Yeah.
You want the flexibility for that.
A lot of these things, and great, it's good at the conceptualization phase, but riding arena takes a lot of maintenance, a lot more maintenance than you would imagine. So, we just passed the lowest millage rate. The goal is not to start increasing staff for things that don't help everybody. So it's just something to think about.
And I think it's important. Like most likely, none of us are going to be putting this riding arena there. It's going to be decades, down the road. And is that something that we envision the future Milton? If there was a riding arena, would it be at Birmingham Park?
Well, I don't have a problem excluding it for the future. I'm just saying for us,
Correct.
to your point, I think we're in sync.
Sarah, do you mind putting the map up there again?
Sure.
Please. Just as we're talking through leveraging that 22 acres to possibly one day put any of those larger items on. Just think about access. How would you get there?
You'd ride your horse.
Ride your horse to the
You do that in a curb cut, I guess.
Right. It does adjoin Hickory Flat, or there is a bit of topography between the equestrian lot and where the power easement is. This is the power easement that runs through the property.
I think that's really going to be public works. Decades down the road, I would think we would probably put something else somewhere else. Like, I don't think we're going to put a dog park there anyway, So let's go back to, Councilmember Haney, are you looking at that?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm just, yeah.
So is there anything on this list, council, that you do not want ever?
Dog park.
Dog park.
Okay. That one's one. There we go.
Are you sure?
Sarah, have you gotten feedback from the equestrian committee on this list?
We have not, no.
It might be worth floating it by them as well.
Oh, yeah, I think that'll be good
I
too.
think you had a good point, right? It's a vision for the future. Like what concept could you envision 10 years from now, 20 years from now? Are one of these structures ideal? Be interesting to get their perspective.
And when we say pavilion barn, does the agreement list what size it can be? And
So that is, we could list barn under the less than 250. That way we're limiting the size that it could, it couldn't, because we didn't list it under large structure. That way it's at least setting a maximum square footage.
that's something
So-
to think about.
Okay.
Just as
Sure.
we're going
I
through it.
also wonder though, whether just keeping it pure might be a better way to go. You know, we keep adding all these little
Social
things
opportunities,
to,
and that's what I'm talking
to it.
about.
And that kind of defeats the purpose of why we're doing what we're doing, which was to keep it just the way it is. And I know you put an arena in and you got some fencing going in, and before you know it, it's
Ferris
not
wheel?
really.
Yeah, I totally see where you're coming from. Maybe you've heard some discussion from council. We're kind of open to some things and we're obviously against some certain things. Maybe it would be great to let the equestrian committee just take a stab at it really quick and then come back with some stuff.
I'd like to add one thing that's kind of squishy. The more trails that are added anywhere, we really are changing, obviously, use. And with more and more trails, we're also negating the natural aspect of it because you have cut trails and it changes wildlife habitat, behavior, et cetera. Is there any desire, any way to make sure that future generations don't over trail it so that we've lost, I mean, they can't turn sections into a meadow, they can't do this, they can't do that? Are there ways to do that? Because, some people might be at cross purposes, really. When things are very concentrated here, people could be at cross purposes with there's a natural land sitting there and find a back door in to be able to just start leveling for pickup soccer games and things like that. I'd really like to prohibit that.
We know how many miles of trails are in there now, correct?
Yes.
So we could put a limit on the mileage. I
Like
mean,
you have to cover one if you open another like they do in Teton or Yellowstone, that kind of thing.
Can we pull up that trail map again real quick?
Sure.
Yeah,
that's a good
I don't
point.
think we have to
That seems,
make multi-use every piece of property we buy, right? I mean, part of preserving Milton is buying it to do nothing with it because we're preserving it being exactly what
Yeah.
it is.
Fair point.
And I think that's okay.
we're doing so much in so many other areas
Yeah.
that maybe this is the one that we just have to limit a lot of things.
Mhm.
so for example, Councilman Cookerly's, that trail plan, you're like, that actually is a lot of trails. Just
It's
by
a lot of
looking at it.
trails,
Yeah.
and to my point, you add more trails and it's really not good.
What we're looking at there, what exists today?
Let's see. I know I have another graphic. I think it's in the other presentation. Just a second. Let's see. So these are some of the various trails that exist today with the different color coding.
Yeah, I think that's plenty.
That's a lot.
I mean, maybe we can just connect a couple of them. I think that's plenty.
Yeah, that's a lot. We don't need to,
I think you take away from it if you do more. I think you're
So maybe the point is you just limit the number of miles that are on there, and if they want to create a new one, do you have to replan it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good discussion. It's good.
Yeah, I'm okay with leaving as much raw as possible.
Yeah.
Do you want us to start with maybe calculating the mileage on the trail plan?
Yeah.
See where that puts us and see how many we have currently. And perhaps we'll do one more briefing with you before we bring the agreement forward,
I think
just to
that's
make
good.
sure we've gotten everything
Yeah.
covered.
I think you have most of kind of what we're kind of
Right.
looking at.
Yes,
but just to
definitely.
be clear, some of these, okay, so some of these are part of the conception plan?
yes.
Okay,
Correct.
that's, I mean, as I was saying earlier, that's just excessive to me. I mean, you're within earshot of people in the next trail. It's just,
I think,
That ain't
I
what
think it
it's
looks, I think it looks that way when we see it this way. Those trails are over a pretty big area of property. I don't think you're going to hear people from trail to trail. It's pretty broad, but that notwithstanding, I don't think we need any more.
I think if we had a clear map that showed us exactly what was there, and then layer on kind of what is being proposed and say, well, maybe we want to limit it somewheres in between.
Because
Or maybe limit it where it's at.
I think the topography is also what dictates a lot of this trail too.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe we can bring that too.
Okay.
All right.
thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Thank you for
Sarah.
the
Anybody have
feedback.
any other questions? We good?
Good
Okay.
stuff.
Okay. Sound next item, please.
That next item is discussion of the Milton Equestrian Committee recommendations on potential large lot incentives. Our Interim Community Development Director, Diana Wheeler.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm pleased to present to you this evening the Milton Equestrian Committee's recommendations for large lot incentives for the purpose of general discussion and to solicit your feedback. That is our only agenda this evening for this item. And we want to do that by first providing you with a brief overview of the process and how we got to where we are this evening, then a summary of the staff-generated incentives that were considered and discussed, then a summary of the Equestrian Committee's recommended incentives, and then finally the incentives that the committee themselves put forward for discussion for large lot incentives and also some growth management recommendations. This is a process that has taken us about 9 months, and it's an interactive process between the Equestrian Committee staff and the community. We wanted to provide an opportunity to have these sort of discussions in a public setting where we could have community input. And in fact, we had a lot of community input at these meetings about the different types of incentives. The public participated in the discussion, and their comments and remarks informed the Equestrian Committee and allowed them to make the recommendations that they're presenting to you this evening. The Equestrian Committee generated some ideas on their own, staff generated some ideas, and the objective was to throw everything out there and discuss all the different things that we can think of for the purpose of generating a lot of discussion and then filtering through and sorting through all the different items for your consideration. We're going to show you all of the items, but then only focus on the ones that actually received their recommendation. Some of these recommendations are a lot more meaningful, more robust, and are more universally applicable. Some may only be applicable to a few property owners, but when you combine all of these together, they form a packet of incentives that will allow the city to more robustly market Milton as an equestrian community that supports an equestrian lifestyle. And so that's what all of these things together represent. All the proposed incentives and strategies are going to be outlined, but as I said, only the ones that are recommended are going to be, we'll go into in depth. So we looked at allowing covered riding arenas by right. We looked at creating a hobby farm definition. We looked at added stormwater credits. We looked at allowing home-based businesses and accessory structures, allowing accessory buildings in front yards, requiring buffers on AG properties. We considered short-term rentals on lots 3 acres or greater, waiving business license fees for horse farms, establishing an AG exempt process, and providing more access options for lots of 3 acres or greater. Ultimately, the Equestrian Committee supported some, but not all of these recommendations, or at least ideas. Some of the things that they did not support included creating a hobby farm definition on properties. They did not support accessory buildings in front yards by right. They did not support short-term rentals on large lot properties. They did not support allowing greater access options for lots of 3 acres or greater. However, we did have those discussions in a public meeting with public input, and so that's the basis for why they made the recommendations that they made. Let's talk first about the covered riding arena, something that the Equestrian Committee did support. Right now, covered riding arenas are allowed with a use permit, and the recommendation is that they be allowed with an administrative use permit. In other words, not to go through the 4 or 5 month public hearing process, but that administrative use permit will be based on specific criteria. And the criteria that's outlined is exactly the criteria that was adopted for the one covered riding arena that did go through the public hearing process, with the assumption that if this is the precedent that has been established, most likely this is what was supported by the community through the public hearing process and would most likely be supported in the future. And so these are the criteria that are established. Not to suggest that you couldn't add some or remove some if you wanted to, but at least at a minimum, this is something to consider at the Equestrian Committee's recommendation. Give you a second to look at those and ask if there are any comments or questions.
Did you, just for, to facilitate this, we're going to go through each one
Yes.
individually? Okay, good.
Yes,
Okay.
each one. And if you have comments or questions, we'll certainly make note of those. And if you want any changes or other things for us to consider, or if you'd like the Equestrian Committee to consider some more items, we'd be happy to take that information forward as well.
And so you're suggesting this as an option to be added
Yes.
based on how the only one that has been approved was approved. These are all the same.
That's right. These are the conditions of approval for the one that was approved.
Was that Wood Road?
Yes. And so
How many acres was that property?
I don't recall specifically.
Okay.
But if this is something you'd be interested in doing, then the objective here is to create the incentive of not requiring somebody to go through a long, protracted public hearing process if ultimately what will be the result is an approval with these types of conditions, because this is what has been done in the past.
But what would help me kind of better make a good decision is I am kind of curious how many covered riding arenas we currently have in Milton and what's the acreage of those parcels. That would help. Obviously, we're not going to know that tonight, but for future, that'd be good.
All right.
And the size of the one on Wood specifically.
Other comments or questions?
Can you explain to me what the UDC section 9.4.4 utilized on the lighting? Give me an idea of what that is.
In residential areas, at the property line for residential, 1 foot candle for covered riding arena. That's the standard for residential. Those sections simply speak to the amount of illumination at the property line for properties, whether they're residential or commercial. And that's the standard that's been established in the city.
Does that help?
All right, ready to move on?
I had one other question. Was there any
Yes, sir.
discussion on why covered riding arenas were allowed by right, but accessory structures were not? Any correlation between that? Was there a discussion from the Equestrian Committee?
Are you talking about these covered riding arenas are not allowed by right? They're a
they-
use permit.
But they will be allowed by right,
The
correct?
No,
accessory
no.
were,
It would be by administrative permit.
But not a use permit that we're,
That's right, not a public hearing process. That's correct.
okay.
Yes.
I mean, I could see how you would think that would be sort of
I
by
think,
right,
I
kind of more of a shoe-in kind of thing.
But the accessory structure was not allowing it in front of a house,
Correct.
right?
But
That
the
was-
covered
That's
riding, the covered riding arena can be anywhere?
No, it can't be anywhere because it requires parking and other things and it has setbacks. But if it follows these guidelines, or if it were adopted these requirements, then a staff person could simply check the plans, see that it met all of these requirements, and then approve it administratively.
Right. Okay.
I don't know what I think about a hard number of 10 acres.
That seems.
I mean, I mean, as a minimum, in case like two neighbors wanted to go in together, you know, I see the wisdom. I don't know that people are just clamoring to put them up everywhere either. So it could be much ado about
I would
nothing.
really like to know the data on how many we have and what's the average parcel size.
We'll
Less
get
than
that
10.
information. The 10 acres
Going
is
through my brain.
actually,
Yeah, you're counting them all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that really bears any relevance because we're trying to make it easier for people on smaller lots to be able to do it.
Well, I
But I
think
mean,
it-
you know Shannon, you know Tony, you know, I mean, those are all larger lots. I can think of a number that have smaller, but they also have smaller indoors.
But also
So-
getting those,
I mean,
Is-
covered, excuse me.
yeah, as small as 10 to keep it that way. And if that's an option,
Yeah.
as opposed to sell it to a developer, which would we rather?
I mean, actually, it raises a point. If you're on smaller and you wanted some semblance of a covered riding, then you could ratchet down substantially.
So is there a ratio between acreage and size of?
I mean, maybe. I mean, I don't have one, so I'm not in this, but, you know, a lot of people might want to do that. I don't know.
we only use the 10 acres because that's in the code already. All we did was change the part that said requires a use permit to requires an administrative use.
So if I had 5
like
acres,
that.
I would still come in.
You would have to go through a
permit.
process.
So the process is still there.
The process is there. It's just for the ones that are 10 acres that have to, the code currently
10
addresses
acres is
them.
not a lot of land. I mean, and especially now, if you're going to build something now and you have 10 acres and you got floodplain, you got other things. I mean, it's just once you go down this road and I consider administrative use permit a by right. I just do if it checks the boxes. Just want to be very cognizant of kind of how many are coming through the door, how many are actually building, and are we going to create something that we,
Have we had any requests recently?
I don't think we have.
No.
You know, look, I think you're making progress in the area. I'd just like to think about it a little bit.
Okay.
I mean,
Maybe come back with a
commend the
little bit.
committee on, so these are some good bones here, but I don't think there's going to be a rush to build on this stuff.
Was there any discussion on lights, whether that was a use permit or by right at all, or?
No, the light standard was just, it's already established in the code. But I
Okay.
mean, these are good comments and
Okay.
I've made a note, so we
All right.
can certainly
I
move
think
on.
the biggest concern was the height, the lights, and the sound. And it sounds like you've curtailed all of that to what was approved on Wood Road already. So
That's right.
a lot of the concerns we would have kind of already been addressed.
That's right.
You're on the lot next to this property. How close can your house be to the property line?
75 feet.
75
No,
feet.
If you're on the other side of that, say somebody had a house, it could be as close as 25 feet to their property line, correct?
Oh, if it's like an interior side lot line, possibly.
So they could have a parking lot 100 feet from their house.
It's possible.
Gee, that seems awful close. I mean, I'm not sure I'd want a parking lot like that, 75 or 100 feet from my house. I don't know, that's just,
Well, not everybody has visitors.
You got some feedback.
but if you
All
got a
right.
Yeah, some
parking.
feedback.
Thank you.
lot,
Appreciate the
somehow-
feedback.
Come back with some stuff.
All right,
Okay.
let's talk about stormwater options. This is a technical issue, and we have our technical expert here if you have specific questions.
Okay.
But we'll talk about stormwater options for large lots. There are obviously stormwater requirements. When we have 1 acre lots, there are very limited options for those folks because they have 1 acre. But for large lots, there is some flexibility. There are things that can be done, such as dry wells infiltration trenches, infiltration practices, rainwater harvesting, regenerative stormwater conveyances that can be also more robust on larger properties that can't be accommodated on small properties. In addition to that, there are opportunities for conservation easements that can be used for stormwater mitigation. We also have the opportunity for the director to approve variances for alternative stormwater design methods. In other words, we want to promote the fact that there's greater flexibility when there are large lots than small lots, and encourage people to take advantage of some of those so that they can reduce their costs and gain the benefits of these additional stormwater mitigation efforts. So the proposed policy is that for properties of 3 acres or greater, special consideration may be granted for the use of dry wells, infiltration trenches, infiltration practices, rainwater harvesting, and regenerative stormwater conveyances toward meeting stormwater management requirements. Recorded covenant conservation easements may be used for water quality calculations on large lot, and the director may approve variances. And to give you an example of what that might look like, this is a site plan, and you can see at this part right here, this is the house, and then this is the farm in the back. It's on a lake, and this particular, if this were a 1 acre piece of property, you would count all of this in determining the calculations for stormwater. But because this is a large lot and it's got some preservation areas, this can be put into a conservation easement, and then all of that is simply removed from the requirements, from the calculations. And ultimately, the goal is to have a situation where costs are reduced for stormwater management for large lots. Of course, there are benefits to the environment and to the community as well in doing all of these things. But that is the goal, is to provide that greater flexibility for the large lots and then help those folks to maintain a more of an environmentally balanced development on their site.
That's interesting.
I think this helps out
Yeah,
quite
it's
a
very
bit.
interesting.
I do get calls about the stormwater and, hey, I got a 5 acre parcel. Why am I having to do the same stuff as a 1 acre parcel? And so I think this will help out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Council good?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
All right, we're all good. Home-based businesses and accessory structures. Now, the recommendation here is to allow a home-based business to operate in an accessory building on a large lot, 3 acres or more, by administrative permit instead of through a special use permit, understanding that there would be no uses allowed in this accessory building that wouldn't be allowed as a home-based business in the home. It doesn't change anything about the requirements for home-based business except the location, which right now says you can only have a home-based business within the confines of the single-family primary residence. So if you have an accessory structure, you can't do that thing which you are allowed to do in your home. That doesn't mean you can do anything in your home. It means you can do whatever is allowed as a home-based business within your home. For example, our most recent case is the bookbinding business on Pleasant Hollow Trail. You see the house on the right, the barn on the left, and they do a home-based business as bookbinding.
They got a use permit for that, though.
They did. They went through a use permit for that.
Okay.
But they did that, and there were conditions attached to it, and those conditions all had to do with how to operate a home-based business.
But like that example would not, like, you can't do that tomorrow after we pass this. You still have to apply for the use permit on that one, correct?
If this were approved, this amendment to 8814 home occupations, where it currently says accessory buildings and structures must not be used for home occupation, it would be amended to say on lots of less than 3 acres. Accessory buildings and structures on lots of 3 acres or greater may be used for a home occupation subject to administrative permit approval. And with an administrative permit, what we would do is check to ensure that all of the things for home-based business are in fact occurring within the accessory structure, same things that would have to be for the home-based business. And this is a pretty substantial list of things. You can only have residents of the home operating the business. So in other words, no employees, right? It can't be more than 750 square feet. They have to have licensing. No more than 2 clients or patrons are allowed on the premises at the same time. Only resident vehicles are allowed. All of those things that could be objectionable to neighbors are covered under the requirements for home-based business. It would be difficult to come up with something in addition to this very, very robust list of limitations on a home-based business. So all this would do is to say that if you have an accessory structure like the barn on that one piece of property, they can do all of these things with the same limitations, just that they could do it in that accessory structure instead of within the home.
I have a question. Is now the time?
Yeah.
Okay. So, 3 acres doesn't seem like it is now what it used to be. Drive around Milton, I'm seeing houses that are taking up about 2 acres. I mean, there are some monsters out there. So, at the end of the day, if they wanted to do that, it's yet another structure. Are there any guidelines again on impervious surfaces or?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so if a monstrosity is being built, and a number of them are right now on the 3 acres, and they wanted to go and have this auxiliary building, which is probably not necessary because I doubt they had a small business to get their monstrous house, but how does that work? When is enough on 3 acres?
Well, you're right about the impervious surface. There's also a requirement for how many trees have to be on the property. There's also a limitation on setbacks.
Okay, so we have a lot of different ways to.
We have,
come at this,
yes,
and
we have a
can-
lot of different ways to make sure that there isn't more development than a site can accommodate. But if you feel like 3 acres is not big enough, maybe 5 acres is the right number. I mean,
What's the example of the book binding parcel? What example? We went through that issue. Well, how big is that?
The Pleasant Hollow, it was,
3, 4,
I think it was a little bit over 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
3, 5.
I don't really know. I will say that I don't have a problem if there's an employee or two. I mean, if you're an accountant and you have an employee that comes in, or you have, an associate, that's really not an issue. It's really just the clutter effect. And 3 acres, I think, in Milton is getting to be smaller and smaller. So it's just food for your collective thought.
I'm still trying to wrap my brain around your example. When you explained the home-based business, makes perfect sense. Got it. But then when you add the bookbinding one, that's a use permit. So will we be getting rid of those use permits that, in other words, we wouldn't need anymore? So if someone wants to do that now, it's by right.
Unless it didn't check off any one of these 11 things.
They would,
If they-
yes, it would have to meet all of these
Right.
requirements and be at least 3 acres in size.
Correct.
So are we going through the administrative process in where it's checked off, or how's that getting checked off?
Yeah, if it meets all these requirements, that administratively staff can say you're good to go. If they need any one of these things, a musical instrument, a sewing machine, then it comes and needs a special use permit. Is that right?
That's right. If they don't meet this requirement, they have the opportunity to go through
They can still- right.
the public hearing process. They'd have to meet everything for the staff person to be able to check every box and say it's good. But the one that went through the use permit process, the conditions on there address these issues, same issues.
Because we have hundreds of home occupations, people that work from home.
That's right.
They would be allowed to go into their separate garage and do what they're doing in their primary residence.
If
That's
an interior
basically it.
designer. would
Provided
have a
that they-
separate
That's
structure
basically
where she
it.
stored
And they
all of
sign
her
a document
stuff.
that says that they
Not
meet
my
all
wife
of these
I have any
conditions.
room for that on my property.
Right? They have to sign an affidavit that says they meet all of these conditions. So the use and all of the requirements are the same. The only difference here is that, on a 3 acre piece of property, the location can be in an accessory building. That's all.
So we have a lot of businesses, and some very close to me, that are running significant size businesses out of their properties with numerous vehicles and lots of employees.
That would require a use permit. Like that doesn't count here.
Yeah, but I'm saying we're going to have to tighten up on that. If we're
Yes.
making a big deal out of this, we can't have all this stuff running around then. I mean, it behooves us to get a handle on that at a greater level.
What does council think? It's for some feedback and direction to staff.
Again, I think you're in the right direction.
And are you okay with the 3 acres, or do you think a greater acreage would be better?
Fine with it.
I'm also curious on the setbacks that we have on accessory structures.
75 feet, right?
75 feet? Okay, all right.
And the accessory structure is limited to how many square feet?
750.
Okay.
I personally don't have an
700
issue with this topic. I guess, Carson, I see you're still here. I'm just curious of the motivational factor, right? We're trying to incentivize large lots. Does this actually motivate to maintain a large lot, this element? Again, I'm okay with it. I'm just wondering how much of an incentive it offers. That's all. I was just curious, perhaps you guys beat this topic up.
I would say yes. And I would say it would also be a bonus for those who get to do that. I'll use me as an example, which my property is not 3 acres, so it doesn't apply, nor do I have any room behind my house to do this. But if I did, and I could build my wife a structure in the back for her to run her design business out of that, that would be amazing. Because I could get it out of the house. I could get it into a different space, and she could have her own place to run her business. She has one employee that may come over every now and then. No one else, there's no trucks other than like a UPS truck. So it would probably fit the bill of this, and that would be awesome if I could do that. My property's not big enough, so it doesn't apply to me, but that's probably a pretty good example of how that would apply to somebody else.
Because they can build the accessory structure anyway.
They can
That's
build
right.
it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I got it. All right.
Okay.
So you got some lukewarm, I'm thinking.
All right. Good.
Thank you.
Lukewarm, say.
Now let's look at residential buffers. So one of the ideas was to require buffers, vegetative buffers along shared boundaries when a new subdivision is proposed that has 2 or more times the number of lots as an adjacent large lot. So here's an example. We've got 3 10-acre parcels. Property number 1, 10 acres, number 2, 10 acres, and number 3 is proposed to be subdivided into these 9 1-acre or so lots. And in this situation, currently, right now, there wouldn't be any buffer requirements. But if this were adopted, then between property number 2 and this new subdivision, there would be a requirement for a 50-foot vegetative or undisturbed, depending on the condition of the buffer. There would not be one required next to property number 1, because next to property number 1, in the before condition, they had 1 property next to them, and in the after condition, they would have 1 property next to them. So the purpose of this is to try to create some separation and preserve sort of the equestrian or the large lot quality of life for those folks who are living on large lots. Because you can imagine if you were the owner of property number 2 and you had 1 house next to you and 1 house behind you, and all of a sudden you're going to have 4 houses next to you, you might think, you know, that's not the lifestyle I would really like to have, and it's not what I signed up for when I bought in Milton, and maybe I need to move with this new subdivision. But perhaps by having this extra buffer and that separation, you might feel like you still can preserve that large lot environment or that, that quality of life that you had prior to the development of this subdivision. So moving forward, 6.3 Rural Milton Overlay talks about buffers between residential and commercial. What we're suggesting is that we have buffers between residential and residential when one of those is a large lot. So in commercial, the standard for buffers is on sites of 4 acres or less, a 50-foot buffer, which is the example I just showed you. For sites of 4 acres or more, a 75-foot undisturbed buffer. What it would say is that when you have a subdivision where you have more than 3 residential lots, so we're not talking about a minor subdivision, these are major subdivisions, that has 2 or more times the number of lots along a shared property line with an adjacent residential property of 3 acres or greater, then if the subdivision is 4 acres or smaller, we're talking about a 50-foot undisturbed buffer. If it's 4 acres or greater, a 75-foot undisturbed buffer. These buffers cannot include any easements, detention, or grading. They can't be part of any lots. It has to be a separate lot that's owned by the homeowners association. In other words, it will not add to, it cannot be counted towards the density. It's separate from the density. So what it would look like is something like this. Here we have a 3-acre site, and here we have a 6-acre site that is now looking to be subdivided into 4 lots. Because this is more than 4 acres, there's a 75-foot buffer requirement that would be imposed on this development if it's adjacent to a 3-acre lot. And so what that would do then is the same thing that these buffers are intended to do when commercial is next to residential. It provides that separation and allows this property owner to maintain that large lot lifestyle that might be impacted by the development of a smaller lot subdivision.
What happens when they sell?
They don't have to put in a buffer. If this one sells, they don't have to put in a buffer, but that buffer remains because it's common area and it's part of the subdivision.
Yeah, it's a pretty creative incentive for one and disincentive for the other.
Correct.
I wish we could make it retroactive to 2010.
That's creative.
Yeah, that's good.
Whose idea was that? Was that the MEC or y'all?
Yes.
Well played. Thank you.
So again, this doesn't affect the density or anything like that, as far as it's included in their 1 acre yield and
Well,
everything
it
like
could,
that?
it could, if that 75-foot strip eats into the property that's available, it could eat into the density that they could have.
It cannot be counted towards the 1 acre. It
Yeah.
has to be on its own separate platted lot.
So yeah, so it will,
This will
Alright.
minimize, yeah, it'll help us
that's
control
strong.
density.
I just don't want it to have effect on somebody that wants to have their kids living on their property. But I see what we're disincentivizing builders. I mean, I get that too.
This one is curious because it's like the next person, you let the first person sell and they get the buffer, and then the other person can sell, and all of a sudden they kind of get the last man standing wins, I guess, correct?
Well, the person on the left side of your screen is the person we're trying to protect. We're trying to incentivize them to not sell, to preserve that equestrian lifestyle, the large lot lifestyle. And so that is the motivation to not sell.
Yeah, and if
I
they-
agree.
If they choose to sell later, then who are you looking to protect? Like,
That's a good point.
Well, it's like if you bought a lot next to a city park and it won't be developed.
Okay. Any other questions on this? Do you have any?
No, it's very interesting.
Creative.
All right, we're good to move on. Business license fee. So one of the recommendations is to exempt commercial horse farms from business license fee. And if you look at last year's revenue, that's just a little over $1,600. That would be lost if this went into effect.
we're talking $1,600?
Yes, a little over.
$50 million budget.
Is it
right?
worth the conversation?
$50 million, we've already spent that. I'm just kidding. Okay.
We're good with this one? Okay, we'll move on. AG exempt process. We start off by mentioning that AG exempt is not something that goes with a property. It is something that goes with an activity. What is exempt for agricultural is an activity, not a piece of property that's zoned AG. So if somebody has an activity that they believe is exempt from regulations, they would, according to this process that we are recommending here, that they submit an application, which would then be submitted to the Equestrian Committee for review. The Equestrian Committee would determine if the exemption is warranted. if that activity actually is an agricultural activity, and then they would make a recommendation. Now, if somebody has received that, an agricultural exemption, and then they would like to apply for a new specific activity based on something that they've done in the past, they would then submit, again, an application that would then go to, again, the equestrian committee. And by going through this process, it makes it, first of all, an opportunity for people to ask questions, those people who know what questions to ask. The staff isn't necessarily as adept at asking the types of questions about agricultural activities as the equestrian committee would be. And so we would have a group of experts ask the folks what they're looking to do, and if it makes sense, then they could forward that recommendation on to staff, and we would have sort of an educated conversation with the group in a public setting about this exemption. The process itself also is sort of, it works for the folks who have a legitimate AG activity that they would like to exempt, and it discourages the folks who just want to take advantage of something that they think will circumvent certain processes. So it works in both ways.
Questions? I've gotten a lot of these calls too. So people that have a real ag exemption, they're like, staff's not letting me do it. And then the other way around where we have bad examples where people abuse it. So
Work in the system.
this probably works well. So.
All right.
All right.
Moving forward. The equestrian committee had a few recommendations that they would suggest. Neighbor notification: when we have a new subdivision, developer has to place a coming soon sign on the property, let the community know what's going on. A lot of times people get very upset because the first idea that they have that there's something happening. Again, with large subdivisions, we go through a preliminary plat process and notification. But with a small subdivision, 3 acres, 3 lots or less, a lot of times when they see those orange fences going up or the trees coming down, that's the first time they see it, and people are upset about the fact that they didn't know. So just requiring that signage to let everybody, even those folks who are passing by, as well as the people who live nearby, to know what's coming up. They also suggested some sort of a sliding scale for fees, for land development fees that are based on parcel count. So the folks who want to do, the most lots have to pay the highest fee. The ones who do the fewest or the large lots pay the lowest fee. Something to think about. Not sure exactly what the financial implications of that are, but if you like the concept, we will certainly explore it more.
I do. I mean, I think anytime we can incentivize large lots and disincentivize the smaller lots, then great.
Okay.
I mean, going into the whole public zoning process, if, as an incentive, if you're a large lot doing 3 acres or more, doing the preliminary plat, maybe that's something to think about how you do that, as far as maybe they don't have to do the planning commission if they're doing 3 acres or more and they meet all the criteria, that would help out. So just something to think about.
Okay. Other comments on the fees?
What does Ken think about those? I mean,
it's interesting. The fees are supposed to ensure that the city collects nothing more than what the regulatory task that we're engaged in. I can see a pretty credible argument that something that is subdivided less has a lower administrative cost.
Okay.
I could see that. I'm sure that, Ms. Wheeler may agree on that. We'd want to make sure that's something we could quantify, but that doesn't concern me much.
Okay. Stronger requirements for stormwater management on small lots is another idea. Rebuilding existing structures where if you have a barn or something that is kind of falling down and you want to build it within the same footprint, but it happens to be within a setback, that you wouldn't have to go through, the Board of Zoning Appeals or something like that. And of course, this would be for qualified buildings. It would be for those things that we are trying to promote on large lots.
Those were things that are traditionally grandfathered in because they were there before the city was a city or whatever.
That's right. For whatever reason, if it doesn't expand the degree of nonconformity, but it happens to be nonconforming, to not make them go through a process.
That kind of happens fairly common if you're coming in for a variance and staff goes, oh, well, you also have this. Let's go ahead and clean this up.
It comes in all the
Right.
time. In DRB, we always say, oh, it's older than the city is, then we grandfather it in, but they have to go through DRB and then BZA, and it's like, oh my gosh, it
That's
just
correct.
elongates the process.
You'd still have to go through it if you're less than 3 acres, but for people who have more than 3 acres, that would be one of the incentives that's proposed.
100%.
And then the final one is that the city could provide standardized plans for things like run-in sheds and other equestrian-type outbuildings, that if we develop certain standards, people would still have to get a permit, but they wouldn't have to go through the expense of getting an architect or designer or something like that. It would just, more customer friendly if we had these specific buildings that are Milton appropriate in terms of the design, and we'd say, if you want to use this, it's available to you, and we've already pre-approved this plan.
Is that, I would assume that's an equestrian committee suggestion? Yeah. I mean, as long as there are options from the equestrian committee, I'd be fine with that.
Okay. So the next steps are to draft some text amendments based on your comments, the things that we've heard this evening. We want to take those to the Planning Commission at their next meeting in November. The meeting in November, proposed text amendments, and then obviously, once they've made a recommendation, again, at a public meeting with hopefully lots of public input, then we'll be able to come back to the council with the final version of some of these text amendments.
Yep, good.
One of the ones that was, it says it was rejected by the equestrian committee was the number of cuts.
Yes.
Can you put that up, and can we have a brief discussion on that?
So this is one of the things that was discussed. Right now, the existing regulations say that if you have one curb cut on this 10-acre parcel, you have to maintain that one. You may have a second one, possibly, depending on the situation. But right now, there's essentially the same number as used to be for one house, and it then requires internal driveways. The proposal was to allow multiple, if you're dividing 10 acres into 3 lots, that each lot have its own separate driveway. And that reduces the amount of concrete that you see within like the front of the property. And it provides greater flexibility for in the development of these lots. Right now, a lot of times, the builder will build them 3 in a row because, that reduces the cost of the access. But this allows flexibility and that sort of thing. There was, there was some support for this on the equestrian committee, but there was also some members who expressed concern that we're going to see, more of these curb cuts, accesses, driveways off of roadways. It's really an aesthetic issue. It's a matter of what you prefer. Do you prefer to see more access points on the roadway, or would you rather see more of an internal drive?
Well, I guess I listened to the meeting where they had this, and I didn't walk away with the feeling that they were against it. I left it thinking they weren't really either way, But my point is, we talk about not cutting down trees and keeping things natural, yet we're telling the developer, you've got to cut all these extra trees to put these extra long driveways in. To me, I think for a developer, the incentive of doing a larger 3-acre lot and having them the ability to do the separate driveways makes sense other than cutting all this out and making these long driveways and cutting down the additional trees.
I think you're making a very good point. There's math here, like what does minimize harming the canopy? And what is the shortest distance to the home? I mean, it could very well be that Exhibit A with the black is better in some cases than with the orange, but just whoever's doing a schematic to be able to show this is better, this is worse, this is more expensive, this is less expensive, this harms the canopy more than it does, this is more impervious surface than the other. And I think there's some work that needs to be done to prove the point. And then, I mean, what's the enforcement effort? Is it just please do this, or is it by staff? I mean, how do we get there?
Well, if you would like to add this, we'll add this item.
I think for the
Absolutely.
planning commission, that would be good.
All right.
I think that'd be good.
We'll do that, and we'll add that and get their feedback and see how they feel about it.
But
I'd also be interested to know how many does this apply to? Like, how many
Quite a,
10-acre pieces of
no,
property
quite a few.
peninsulas?
Mhm.
Does?
Yes.
Okay.
But that would take some work on staff's part to do that, but I think that'd be worthwhile to be able to make those points, and
Yeah, we'd be happy to do that.
thank you
Yeah, I'd
very
like to
much.
get public works input and everything on curb cuts and all that fun stuff.
We'll definitely do
All right.
that.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate
That's
it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Time well spent. Appreciate it
Thank
very
you, Carson.
much. And thank you, Carson, and your committee. This is great.
Appreciate it. Okay. If you will please, so there's no first presentation items, we'll now move on to the public hearing. Will City Clerk please sound the next item?
Mayor, this public hearing section is the one that was added for tonight's agenda. So we will start with the first public hearing, item A, which is consideration of the issuance of an alcohol beverage license to Yum Thai and Sushi LLC. It's doing business as Yum Thai Cuisine and Bar, located at 3100 Heritage Walk, Suite 102, here in Milton. It's agenda item number 10601, and it is Bernadette Harville, our Deputy City Manager.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First, I'd like to thank you and apologize for the omission on the agenda, and thank you for adding the items this evening. That was my clerical error, and so thank you very much for that. We have 3 public hearings this evening for alcohol beverage license applications. The first one we have before you is for Yum Thai and Sushi LLC, doing business as Yum Thai Cuisine and Bar. This is a new business that will be located at 3100 Heritage Walk in Suite 102. They're applying for consumption on premises of wine, malt beverages, and distilled spirits, including Sunday sales. An advertisement for this public hearing was posted in the Milton Herald on 9/5 and 10/2, and a sign was posted at the property in compliance with code requirements. This business is located in downtown Milton on Heritage Walk on the other side of the roundabout across 372. The establishment meets the requirements for a full-service restaurant, including 40% of the square footage being dedicated to seating, and 50% of annual sales for food and beverage coming from the sale of prepared food or meals. And for Sunday sales, they also meet the threshold of 50% of annual total sales coming from the sale of prepared food or meals. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any public comment on this?
I do not have any, sir.
I'll close the public hearing, and we're going to have to vote the old-fashioned way on this. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve agenda item number 100601.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Verhoff and a second from Councilmember Jacobus to approve agenda item number 100601. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that is unanimous. Okay, please say on the next item.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was waiting over it.
Do your thing. We're good.
I'm glad somebody else
That
does
just
that once
tickles
in
me.
a
I'm
while.
so sorry. It's the consideration of the issuance of an alcohol beverage license to Naiku Barbecue and Hot Pot LLC, 3300 Heritage Walk at Suite 301 here in Milton. It's agenda item number 10602. Ms. Bernadette.
Okay, the second of our 3 ABL requests is for NICU Barbecue and Hot Pot LLC. This is also a new business and will be located at 3300 Heritage Walk, Suite 301. They are also applying for consumption on premises of wine, malt beverages, and distilled spirits, including Sunday sales. An advertisement for this public hearing was posted in Milton Herald on 9/25 and 10/2, and the sign was posted at the property in compliance with code requirements. This business is also located in downtown Milton on Heritage Walk, again on the other side of that 372 roundabout. The establishment does meet the requirements for a full-service restaurant and an eating establishment, and it meets the Sunday sales requirements, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any public comment on this?
We do not have any, sir.
Okay, close the public hearing and open it for a vote.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve 10-0602.
Second.
10-602. Thank you.
All right,
I still second.
100602. So I got a motion from Councilmember Cookerly to approve agenda item 100602. Had a second from Councilmember Haney. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. We will please say on the next item.
That final public hearing item is consideration of the issuance of an alcohol beverage license to IEH Milton LLC. It's doing business as B&B Tavern Crabapple, located at 12620 Crabapple Road, Suite 10 Road here in Milton. Agenda item number 10-0603. Bernadette?
Our third public hearing is also for another new business located in downtown Milton at 12620 Crabapple Road, Suite 101. They are applying for consumption on premises of wine, malt beverages, and distilled spirits, including Sunday sales, and also to be a resident caterer. Their advertisement was placed in the paper on 9/25 and 10/2 as well, and their sign was posted at the property line in compliance with code. Here's their location. They are next to Itasca Walk and Crabapple Road. And they meet the requirements for a full-service restaurant and an eating establishment, as well as that Sunday sales requirement. Happy to answer any questions you may have about this business.
Any public comment?
There are none.
Okay, I'll close that and open it for a motion.
I make a motion to approve agenda item number 10-0603.
Okay, have a motion from Councilmember Haney and a second from Councilmember Johnson to approve agenda item 100603. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. There is no zoning agenda items. We'll now move on to unfinished business. Will the city clerk please sound the next item?
Mayor, that item is consideration of an ordinance of the City of Milton to amend the Unified Development Code and certain Unified Development Code-related references and Appendix A of the Milton Code related to application and permit fees. The first presentation for this item was on September the 15th at the regular meeting, and it is under for consideration to vote tonight. Agenda item number 25259, our Public Works Director, Sarah Leaders.
All right, hopefully this will be a fairly simple one. It's an ordinance to take out UDC-related permits and application fees and instead establish those by resolution later on this evening. So I'll go through the background, the current condition of where this lies in the code and proposed change. So you're able to adopt ordinances, resolution, and regulations. I did want to point out that these sections of the UDC are non-zoning provisions, so they do not have to go through the zoning procedures law for amendments. They are two articles that, again, are not part of the zoning code. So our Appendix A lists all the fees for Unified Development Code related applications and permits. Those haven't been updated in many years. And what drew our attention to this is there's some line item cost within that Appendix A code that spells out the estimates used for installing curb and gutter or roadway paving, sidewalk. So those line item costs lived in the ordinance. So what we're proposing to do here is to remove those when we adopt the fees by resolution, but keep everything else the same for now. There's 3 sections in the UDC that it actually lists the cost in the code. So we're proposing to remove those. Those are related to cost for a stop sign that's missed by a development, for a reinspection fee, and for permitting fees. So we're proposing to take those costs out of the code. One other thing related to these line item costs is they are used for developments to come up with their estimated valuation for the project, which then drives the fee. And they'd also been used in the past for bond calculations. So they don't represent the actual to-date cost for some of this infrastructure. Proposed change is to remove these fee amounts from Appendix A, Article 10 and 11 of the UDC, and instead to establish those by resolution, which can be updated periodically as those fees change over time. So next steps for this item is to consider the ordinance amendment to remove the fees, and later on in the agenda to establish those fees by resolution. Be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Sarah? Any public comment?
There are none.
Okay. With that, I'll open it for a motion.
Make a motion to approve agenda item 25-259.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Cranmer and a second from Councilmember Cookerly to approve agenda item 25-259. Voting is now open. Please place your votes. Okay, yeah.
Oh, there it is.
And that motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please sound the next item.
Mayor, we will now be moving into new business. That new business item is going to be consideration of a resolution for acceptance of the Federal Emergency Management Agency Hazard Mitigation Grant for the purchase of a replacement emergency generator at Station 43. It's agenda item number 25269. Jason Baswell, our Division Chief of Emergency Management, Safety, and Health.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. FEMA provides funding for hazard mitigation projects to assist local governments such as us to build resiliency and also to help us to maintain continuity of operations during an event of such as a natural disaster or man-made disaster. The current generator at Station 43 was identified. It's been identified way back, but specifically in 2022, we had to update our hazard mitigation plan through Atlanta-Fulton County Emergency Management Agency. That plan was approved through FEMA. So this generator was identified. And so with this grant, it's very competitive. We applied for the grant back in 24. We recently heard from them in July. Excited to say we were approved for this grant. There's a federal, it's a matching grant. Federal government covers 75%. We're responsible for another 25. It's very exciting. They're going to cover $62,000 of the funding, and we're only responsible for $20,000. We also got approved for roughly right at $4,000 in subrecipient management costs. We're going to do it ourselves, just managing the project. So that's a little bit of extra not included with the $62,000. So any questions?
Any questions?
What do you do with the old generator?
The generator, it was put in the station in 2002 when the station was built, back when Fulton County built it. These generators have a life normally of 10 to 15 years, and they normally want you to repair them. The problem with that is those generators, after about 10 or 15 years, they quit making parts. So when this generator goes down, and it recently happened, and I want to say it's probably about $10,000 to $12,000 it cost us to bring a temporary generator in until we could get it repaired. The problem with repairing it was they couldn't find parts because they don't make them. So we had to wait until they found parts that were either used or rebuilt, and that's what we put on these. So we'll probably wind up, putting it on Gov Deals. Somebody will probably buy it.
That's what I was wondering, if you're just going to resell it for.
Sell them. So.
Yeah.
Sounds like
It's a great opportunity.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any comment on this?
There
Tammy?
are none, sir.
Okay, close public comment, and I will open it for a motion.
Make a motion to approve agenda item number 25-269.
Second.
Okay, have a motion. They keep beating you, Jan. Sorry. Got a motion from Councilmember Haney and a second from Councilmember Verhoff to approve agenda item number 25-269. Please place your votes.
One's stuck. There it
All right,
is.
there we go. That motion passes unanimously. Okay, if you please sound the next item.
Mayor, that next item is consideration of a resolution adopting the 2025 Capital Improvement Settlement Annual Update relating to the city's Impact Fee Program. Agenda item number 25270, Senior Planner Shuba Jangam.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Shubha Jangam, Principal Planner for the city. I'm here with the 2025 Annual CIE Update, and we are here for the adoption resolution. And just a brief summary of this project, the Georgia Department of Community Affairs, DCA, requires municipalities charging impact fee to file the annual update. As every year we do, the staff work with the impact fee and CIE experts to prepare this report. On August 11th of this year, we had an introductory briefing at the City Council's work session. On August 18th, we had a public hearing and we transmitted the report to DCA. On September 17th, DCA sent an approval notice to the city. So it is ready for adoption by the city, and then we again transmit it to DCA. And once we do that, we have our qualified local government status extended for another year. So it's a every year process. So we're back to adoption of 2025 annual CIE update.
We're going to have to just give it a second.
Oh,
Add a few more details.
You're up, Mayor.
You're up, Mayor.
we are ready to adopt.
We got Mayor Pro Tem here. Have any public comment on that?
We do not.
Okay, we'll open it for a motion.
Make a motion to approve agenda item 25-270.
Second?
Okay, have a motion from Councilmember Kramer and a second from Councilmember Verhoff to approve agenda item 25-270. Voting is now open. Okay, that motion passes with Councilmember Cook early absent. Okay, will you please stay on the next item?
The next item is consideration of a resolution consenting to the expansion of the True North 400 North Fulton Community Improvement District. Agenda item number 25-271, Shubha Jangam.
Okay, just Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. Again, Shubha Jangam, Principal Planner. I'm here with a resolution consenting to the expansion of True North 400, formerly known as North Fulton Community Development District or North Fulton CID. True North has been improving Milton's commercial district for more than 2 decades through series of infrastructure and landscape projects. Every year, participating city must consent to an updated properties map. Therefore, we are presenting this resolution consenting the expansion, even though this year the expansion does not include any properties from Milton. And what you're seeing here is the map, and the smaller map is showing all the cities that are in the True North 400. And we have a representative from True North, Alex Battle here. If you have any questions, he'll be happy to answer.
Thank you. So no additions for this year?
Not this year.
Okay.
No questions.
Okay, any public comment?
We do not have any.
Thanks for coming, Alex.
It's a busy night.
I will open it for a motion.
Motion to approve agenda item number 25-271.
Second?
Okay, have a motion from Councilmember Haney and a second from Councilmember Verhoff to approve agenda item 25-271. The voting's open.
Go. Did mine go?
No.
No, not yet. Lightly.
There we go. Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for your patience.
Please stay on the next item.
The next item is consideration of a resolution to determine that certain public right-of-way no longer serves as substantial public purpose and to initiate abandonment procedures on a portion of Old Bullpen Road within Birmingham Park. It's agenda item number 25-272. Public Works Director, Sarah Leaders.
Okay, you all heard a little bit about this in the first presentation on Birmingham Park. discussion. So this item is to initiate the required legal process to abandon that roadway right-of-way within the area that we're proposing for conservation easement. So Georgia law allows municipalities to abandon roads that no longer serve a substantial public purpose. The segment of Old Bullpen Road that runs through the park no longer provides access to parcels now that they are all part of the park property. The road once connected Hickory Flat to some other parcels that are now incorporated into the park, and a portion of that roadway is actually part of the trail system currently, which is shown on these pictures and is not vehicle worthy roadway anymore. It's more of a trail system amenity. This shows the trails within the park and where some pictures are of different segments of Old Bullpen Road. Again, the purpose of this is looking at the conservation easement where we have the right-of-way that currently runs through the entire parcel. And as part of the conservation easement area, we're proposing to end that road right-of-way at the point where the conservation easement begins. So this one has a couple more steps. We have the resolution tonight to initiate the abandonment process. Because that right-of-way touches one property owner at the very northeastern end of the property, we're going to, after this resolution, then provide notice to that property owner and then a final resolution of abandonment at the next council meeting. We'll then be able to record the deed to get rid of the right-of-way, remove it from the conservation easement survey, and then that plays into finalizing the conservation easement language and then finally considering that conservation easement. Be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Sarah? Okay, we'll open it for motion or any public comment.
We do not, sir.
Okay, open it for motion.
Make a motion to approve agenda item 25-272.
Second?
Okay, have a motion from Councilor Cranmer and a second from Councilor Verhoff to approve agenda item number 25-272. Please place your votes. Okay, that motion passes and Councilor Johnson's absent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please sound the next item.
Mayor, that final new business item is a consideration of a resolution to establish a fee schedule for certain Unified Development Code related applications and permits. It's agenda item number 25-273. Sarah Leaders.
Practice for long meetings.
This item follows along behind on the resolution or the ordinance change a few items earlier. So the purpose here is to now set our fees related to permits and applications for UDC related items by resolution. So we have brought over the same items that were in the ordinance with the exception of removing these valuation descriptions. So the linear foot cost for curb and gutter, sidewalk, those things are being removed. And instead we're referencing some standards that are updated based on actual bids and actual cost. So that's the only change we're making at this time. Again, everything else from the ordinance is coming over exactly the same. And those relate to signs, inspections, tree-related, stormwater, LDPs, erosion, rezoning variance, plat, bond, others. But our plan is, after this is now set by resolution, to review other jurisdictions, take a look at our actual cost, since those have changed over the last decade plus, and to be able to update those on a timely basis and keep them current with the market and with what neighboring jurisdictions are doing. So tonight's item just establishes that same fee schedule with that one change from the ordinance, and we'll be back to discuss future updates at a later meeting.
Okay, any public comment on this?
There are none.
Okay, open it for motion.
A motion to approve agenda item 25-273.
Second.
Okay, have a motion from Council Member Cranmer and a second from Councilor Haney to approve agenda item 25-273. Please place your votes. Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate it. Any council reports? Nothing. Just want to say thanks to Emily and the team for another successful Crabapple Fest. Keeps getting better and better. So appreciate the entire team. With that, I'll have a motion to adjourn to executive session
Motion to adjourn to executive
to
session.
discuss litigation, land
Personnel.
acquisition, and personnel. That was Jacobus and Haney?
Yeah.
All right?
Jacobus and Haney.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks. All in favor, say aye.
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 Oh, goodness.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. So that was Haney and Cookerly. And can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. That was Jacobus and Johnson. See ya. See ya. Adios.